what is up, y'all? Happy weekend. First off, sorry for going rogue again. Okay, I've just been so busy. We've been traveling to like every side of the country, I feel like, doing all sorts of adventures. I've just been living my best life, and just trying to keep up with this baby that's all over the place. But most importantly, some big life updates for y'all since you're my biggest supporters. I got a teaching job, like a real teaching job. Like, people call me Professor Kim. I cannot stress enough how happy I am. So I'm teaching online at a local community college in Dayton, and it's actual perfection. It's English comp. It's my dream job. The students are amazing. The staff has been super supportive and amazing. The course materials are amazing. It's just actually everything that I've ever wanted. And I'm so happy because this is exactly where I wanted to be. This is the exact job I've wanted for years now. I mean, you guys know this. The OGs that have been around for a while. How many years have I talked about wanting to do this? To teach intro English classes to kids who don't know why we need to write essays in school and who think reading is dumb. This is my dream job, and now it's finally come true. And it's only been a month since classes started. And I've got some guys in my class, typical varsity football kids who hate reading and writing. And it was so sweet because in the pre-writing exercise for the first essay, this kid was writing pages of peer feedback and essay analysis and reflection when it was only supposed to be 250 words. And he ends it with, this is embarrassing to say, but I'm actually kind of excited to write this essay now. And I was like, yes, I've got him. I hooked him. He gets it. This is what it's all about. So I guess all of this to say, don't give up on your dreams, put in the work, and they'll happen in due time. Now, getting into the beef of this episode, it's not necessarily a happy, lighthearted topic, but it's important. And I think it also highlights the key point here that systemic racism and racial injustices are actually happening every day, everywhere. We've progressed, yes, but there's still more work to do. Racism is not removed entirely from our country. I don't care where you live, there's still racial biases happening. Maybe not as openly, maybe not on the surface, but if you take the time to really look, and here's the big one that I'll talk about more, if you accept diversity into your daily life, you'll see it. So let me back up here a little bit, okay? I know I've mentioned before how some people in my circle are like, Maggie, you're being too much with this whole race thing, and it's not that serious, and blah, 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 right? And someone pretty close to me actually was talking to me a few months ago about, I don't know, something unrelated, doesn't matter. And they were teasing me and kind of joking, mocking, but also they said it, so kind of serious, whatever. And they were they were talking about how I am with racial injustice and honestly this podcast and how I was so over the top and blah, blah, blah. And they called me a social justice warrior. And not gonna lie, my first gut reaction was really? That's what you think of me. That's what you think of my efforts to make people decent human beings, right? Just to make the world better, to make people stop bullying other people, basically. But then my second reaction was so you think I'm a warrior, huh? And listen, this isn't just some little thing of me being woke or being dramatic, whatever. Again, I've said this from the jump. I'll probably say it for the rest of my life. This is real. This is happening. Racial injustice is an issue. Marcellus Williams, Javion McGhee. These names, these people probably mean nothing to you. And that's kind of the problem. These are prime examples of how much racism is still present in our judicial system and in our country as a whole. So Javion McGhee was a 21-year-old truck driver from Illinois. He was found dead a couple weeks ago in a rural part of North Carolina on September 11th. They found him at the bottom of a tree with a rope wrapped around his neck 11 times. So Henderson, North Carolina was traditionally known as a sunset town, which if you aren't familiar with that term, it's areas mostly from the 1890s to 1968 where Black people were not allowed after sunset and often faced violence, including lynchings. And later on, they still, maybe legally they don't say Black people, you're not allowed here, but we all know there are explicit and implicit ways to keep the demographic of an area predominantly white, right? I don't need to tell you all that. We all know this happens. I honestly had never heard this term before. I saw it on a social media post about this case, and I was like, ooh, Sunset Town, what is that? And so I had to look it up. So I said I saw this on Instagram, right? A lot of TikTok and family members and social media. Now, I don't even want to say influencers because they're just people, but they're really trying to push his name out there to the public to raise awareness and to push his investigation along. They're openly calling it a lynching, but the cops are just saying it's a suicide, and they're kind of hushing it a little bit. Allegedly, they were denying the family access to the body for a bit. And so Vance County Sheriff Curtis R. Brame, he's refuting this narrative and said, quote, "There is not a lynching in Vance County. The young man was not dangling from a tree. He was not swinging from a tree. The rope was wrapped around his neck. It was not a noose. There was not a knot in the rope. So therefore, it was not a lynching here in Vance County," unquote. Now, what do I know, right? But that sounds like an awful explanation and a terrible excuse considering the circumstances. If I was the sheriff, or if I was in charge of his fucking PR team, and the autopsy showed it was truly a suicide, but the public was in an outrage because it looked like a lynching because a black man was hanging from a tree in a sunset town in North Carolina, I wouldn't go out and say, oh, it's not a lynching because there wasn't a knot. I would not say that. No, I would not take that approach. His answer sounds so suspect and fishy to me, not convincing at all. And what gets me is y'all probably have never heard this. Probably haven't seen it on social media. You're not seeing this on the news. Definitely not the national news. It's only on local channels after the family and others on social media said, no, this is a big deal. Don't hush this up. Say his name. Share his story. And that's wild to me. It's 2024 and people are maybe, but probably being lynched. And we say there isn't a race issue. We say social justice warrior as if it's a bad thing. We say woke as if it's a bad thing. We say diversity and inclusion is unnecessary. I'm saying open your eyes, right? Because this is happening, whether you want to admit it or not, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. It is happening. Marcellus Williams has, let me look at the countdown, 10 hours and 3 minutes currently left on his life. Maybe. Unless Governor Mike Parson from Missouri grants him clemency from his death sentence. So he's on death row and has served almost 24 years now for a murder of a white woman that occurred in 1998, except DNA and other forensic evidence from the crime scene wasn't his, and he was convicted based on incentivized informants. And remember, our country's legal system is foundationally reliant on the concept of innocent until proven guilty, unless you're black, apparently. And the state has openly admitted that the evidence that could conclusively prove his innocence has been, quote, destroyed or corrupted, unquote. So, to recap, there is no reliable evidence proving he committed this crime. But we're about to execute him anyway because it's a black man and the victim is a white woman. And y'all know my stance on the death penalty, even if the person is guilty. But come on. Even the family of the victim has come out and said that they believe life without parole is the appropriate sentence, not death. Again, do we hear his name on national news? No, we don't. We see it in select circles on social media trying to spread awareness. And we label those people as woke, social justice warriors, all that. And to me, this is actually reality. This is a prime example of where our country is truly at. Racial bias still happening. And maybe if you're living in a bougie white neighborhood and all your friends, all the people you talk to, all the people you interact with are middle or upper class and or white, just a lot of Trader Joe shoppers and flannels and chads, yeah, I'm not surprised that you think racism isn't a problem because you don't see the problem. And I know that might come off as a little bit aggressive and hateful and judgy, but I do hope y'all get what I'm trying to say. Like, Diversity is important for exactly this reason. And best example, look at social media and your algorithm. What you see every day does become your reality. Something that pops up on your feed all the time, and you start absorbing it and you think, yeah, this person is everywhere. They're so famous. And you mention it to a friend and they're like, who? I've never seen them before in my life. That happens to me all the time. And you get this weird reality check like, wow, we're really living different lives based on our social media algorithm. And that's why I think it's so important to surround yourself with different people and different opinions and diversity. Like, read diverse books, listen to other people's stories. That's how you'll get a rich perspective on life and get a more honest look at our society and our world as a whole. And most of all, I think we just need to speak up, right? I think we just need to acknowledge it, say it out loud, and I mean, that's really just like step number one to making the world better. Not to sound dramatic, but I mean, I feel like everyone knows this is kind of cliche at this point. It's so common. Step number one of fixing a problem is acknowledge that you have a problem, right? And I want to share with y'all one more circumstance. Caitlin Clark, super cool, right? I don't know if you've heard of her. She's in the WNBA, so probably haven't because, who cares about women's sports? She's amazing though. She's like breaking all the records, doing great things for the game. I mean, y'all know I'm not really into sports, but like I know of her, right? So that kind of tells you something. She plays for the Indiana Fever, but she, over the summer, around June, she got into the news a little bit for some racial things. And I think it was a really cool example of what progress can look like, right? So she's a rookie. I think this is like her first year playing for the WNBA. Like I said, though, doing amazing things, right? So she just kind of got slingshot into stardom, basically. And what started was, so her name was getting brought up a lot. She is white. She's also straight. And so she got brought up in a lot of like culture debates, a lot of stuff online, why was she left off Team USA Olympics, blah, 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 all these things. People had a lot of stuff to say to her because she's good, right? So they had a lot to say. And originally, when she was responding to all of these comments, she said, quote, not something she can control. I don't put too much thought and time into thinking about things like that. And to be honest, I don't see a lot of it. Basketball is my job. Everything on the outside, I can't control that. So I'm not going to spend time thinking about that. And, at first glance, it's like, oh, good for her. She's not getting sucked up into social media, staying focused, blah, blah, blah. But then, like I said, a lot of this stuff got into racial discussions and things of that nature. And someone from the Connecticut Sun, her last name's Carrington, she spoke out on it. And I think she had a really, really good point. And she said, quote, dog, how can one not be bothered by their name being used to justify racism, bigotry, misogyny, xenophobia, homophobia, and the intersectionalities of them all is nuts. We all see the shit, we all have a platform, we all have a voice, and they all hold weight. Silence is a luxury, unquote. Now, after that, because I was like, ooh, that's golden. Frame that right there. That's what we all need to hear. And after that comment, then Caitlin Clark came back and she was like, yeah, you're right. Don't use my name in these types of comments. It's unacceptable. They shouldn't be using my name to push those agendas. It's disappointing. It's unacceptable. Quote, treating every single woman in this league with the same amount of respect. I think it's just a basic human thing that everybody should do, unquote. So yeah, I think that's amazing. Silence is a luxury. I love that. I think that's like the most key thing here is like, yeah, we have to do something. You have a voice. You can use your voice. And all you can do is share your story, right? And stand up for people who are not being heard. Stand up for people who aren't able to tell their story. And hopefully we can get better. Hopefully people can stop dying unnecessarily. Last thing before I close out this episode, I know you didn't ask, but I'm going to share it with y'all anyway. I just read To Kill a Mockingbird for the first time. And I mean, wow. I know I'm, 24 years late to the party because everyone reads it in high school or middle school. I don't know when. So apparently everyone and their brothers already read it, which is amazing. I think everyone should read it. If you haven't read it since high school, or maybe you didn't actually really pay attention and you just kind of read the cliff notes and called it a day, dude, reread it. Listen to it on audiobook if you're not into actually reading. It's so good. I know I say this all the time about books like this, but it's still applicable today, which is scary and concerning. So good. It's so good. Make good choices. Be a decent human being. Use your voice. Silence is a luxury. And I will catch y'all next time. Okay, bye.